it's Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. We talk running, fitness, mental health, and so many more topics. As the founder of a youth running program, I approach all of our conversations with our youth athletes in mind and kind of have a focus around those things. But as you will see, we are finding that all of these topics relate to runners and people who like to move and do fitness or anything like that. Relates to everybody. Check it out.
In today's episode, we have our only 3-time returning guest so far, Tilita, or Coach T. First of all, I apologize. I am still recovering from a cold. I was trying to wait to record this until I didn't sound sick, but time ran out on me, so here we are. But today we're talking about goals, goal setting, kind of really just, she breaks down so well how to do this, how to start structuring this, the importance of the different steps to doing this. And then we also talk about recovering from goals when things don't really go your way, because I think, at least for me personally, that is a really hard thing. When you set a goal and you work towards it, how to kind of pivot or restructure things. But also she talks about kind of if the way you're planning and if you're working towards all these things, how that doesn't always have to be an option, right? Like, you're set up so well for success for your goals because you've worked so many different steps to get there. So a really great episode talking about goals. And check back on her other episodes, because we have talked about goals pretty much every time, because she is a high performance coach, and that is really what she's working with people on, is helping them achieve goals they never even thought that they had. So check it out.
But okay. All right. Well, we can just get right into it, I guess, because of course we can just chit chat, catch up, and then get to goals. But
right.
Our only ever, was it 3-time returning guest, Coach T, is here. I'm so excited. How are you?
I am excited too. I'm doing well. I was thinking too, I was like, yes, the double Coach T is back in action.
Yeah, I wish. Oh man. No, it's actually funny. We were at the zoo today and I ran it randomly. It's like 40 minutes from our house. I ran into one of the kids that I coach and she was like, Coach Tori. And I'm like, oh, even that sounds cool. Like, hi, how are you? Yes, that's me.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Yeah, well, so, I mean, we haven't really chatted too much. I feel like, really all we've talked about a little bit was actually goals anyway, right? Like, you were like, I've got a lot that's going on. I'm like, oh my gosh, me too. So much going on. Not really sure where my head's at. And so, yeah, I guess, before I just get into like, tell us all about goals, like, what have you been up to? Because last time I feel like we talked, you kind of filled us in a little bit on like training and stuff like that. So, what's going on?
Right. Let me see. Well, yes, training wise, I don't remember the last time. I feel like, yes, I had mentioned to you there was this rough patch, I think. And let's see, toward the end of 2022, I had gone home to North Carolina on the East Coast to visit my mother for 2 weeks, and it turned into a 6-week trip because while I was there, it all came just flooding. It all came out, like, I just didn't realize. I mean, when you're having trouble with something, or I'm working really hard on this thing and it's not going my way. But what I didn't know is just how deeply it was really affecting me. And while I was at home with my mom, you're in that place of familiarity and around like hometown friends, and it just felt so comfortable, which made it just come out, like, whether coming out meaning whether that's crying, whether that's just talk and connecting and not wanting to stop connecting with the people there, and or not wanting to get out of your childhood bed for like the whole day or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So that happened and I was like, oof, I really don't at right now, I don't think I want to or can go back to Los Angeles at the moment. I just need a couple more weeks. I just need, I didn't feel like I could be in my regular day-to-day just yet after the 2 weeks. So I extended my trip and felt so much better afterwards, and got back some spark essentially, and really thinking about, okay, what is it that you really are attempting to do, whether that's with me as an athlete and me as a coach, as well as, long story short, my artistic self came rushing back. That's been coming back over the last few years. But I'm an artist as well. I'm a performing artist as well. So all of these things have been rushing back, and just needing to sit down and decide, are these things really meaningful to you? Like, are you passionate about them, or are you just being, what's the word? Stubborn, like, no, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to make it happen. Or do I really have still a deep connection with these things? And the answer that I have a deep connection with coaching, with being an athlete, and with being a performer. So my goal has been to find a way to either fuse them all together, or really evaluate, what does harmony look like with all of them. I'm not so much into I get what people mean when they're talking about balance, but it isn't actual balance that we're creating. You want to create harmony with the things that you do, or with the different aspects of your life. To me, balance means, if it's on a scale, it's literally, they're equal, and it's not in our lives, all aspects of our lives won't be equal, but you can find the harmony with them. So that's where I'm at this year. And I do feel better. And the amount of energy I put towards each of those things are coming to that harmonious place.
Yeah, I feel like I need to go to North Carolina for 6 weeks too, then figure it out. It's not my hometown, but I'll go there anyway.
Right.
Wow. I mean, and I'm not really huge into social media, and I don't follow people too much, but I feel like your social media has kind of shown that you had you're putting out lots of different stuff. I feel like, and you can see different aspects of you in that. And I feel like you also can see that you're really trying to connect with your audience. And maybe you've always been that way, because you seem like you're super personable, but no, I feel like after just we checked in one or a few times, in the new year, I was you can really see that you're doing a lot of different stuff, and sharing a lot of different things that aren't just your fitnessy stuff. You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. That means yes, it is. Because, and part of that is getting out of, which I think we all have that thing from time to time, especially when you're starting something new. We're looking at those who have done it and okay, what's the right thing to do? Oh, I'm supposed to be doing this. So when it came to my business and as coaching, I've been coaching for 19, 20 years now, but having my own business, actual coaching business, that's only been for 3-ish years. So in the beginning, or 4 years, my brain and my experience is not business oriented. So I was looking at these things. Oh, I'm supposed to do this. It has to do with business. So I'm supposed to be like this, and it has to look like this. And then realizing, no, that's not actually. Yes, there's certain concepts. Sure, I need to learn about business, but how I show up and to the world is still me as Tilita, and there are different aspects of me, Tilita. And that's what I just leaned into and stopped being so, I don't know, I don't even know the word, structured, or not even structured, because I like structure. What's the word?
Formulaic?
Technical as it relates to business.
Yeah.
And it has to look like this. No, here's all of me. And if people enjoy me, they'll follow. If they don't, then they won't. That's fine.
Yeah. No, I think
so. Thank you. I
awesome.
Appreciate that. That you've noticed the difference.
And I was does it sound stalkery that I'm commenting on your social media?
Oh, no. Not at all. No.
All right. So we are talking about goals because, I mean, everybody has goals, I think, at some point, whether they know it or not. And of course, when I was thinking I wanted to talk about goals, I immediately thought about you because that's kind of what we've been talking about back and forth for the past, like, however long. I feel like it kind of just is what comes up in the conversation is like, hey, it's been like 6 weeks. I forgot to respond, but yes, this is what I've been up to because I'm busy and I'm trying to focus. So, yeah, I guess just, I don't even know where to start with that, but like, I mean, we're supposed to set goals, right? It's hard to achieve something without setting a goal, right?
Right, exactly. That's actually one of my what do you want to call it? It's like a belief bucket or a I don't even know if it's a mantra, but something that is just I say often. You won't accomplish a goal unless you know what it is. Like you have to think it, know it, and say it, write it down, know exactly what it is that you want. And then obviously then it's easier to then make the plan and work towards it. But if 100%, you're not a high achiever, because for those of you listening, if you don't remember me, or if you're new to the podcast, I work with purpose-driven high achievers. So if you're okay with the status quo, then this conversation is not for you. Status quo, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's about intentionality and knowing who you are, what you are. And if you are a high achiever and you aren't setting goals, then no, you're not a high achiever. Like it's in the word achieving. You want to achieve something, so you're setting goals in order to live how you want to live, accomplish something you want to accomplish, to feel how you want to feel, but you're efforting towards something. So yes, it is important. I feel 100% important to set actual goals. And those who I've heard many people say that that's very limiting when you set a goal and it doesn't allow you to be and go with the flow and all of those. No, incorrect. The more intentional you are, the more when you set, and we can go into this, or I know we're going into this in a second as far as setting a plan and tracking and all of that, but especially when you have a plan, the more you're able actually to go with the flow, because you know the intention behind the actions that you take. Setting a goal, then setting the plan, and then implementing certain actions and habits does not mean you can only implement this habit, you can only implement this action. No, it's about the underlying theme and the overall energy of the goal that sets your behaviors and actions and habits. And then if something goes off track, because you have a plan, you can more easily go with the flow to get to course correct and get back on track. But that's it. That's in general. I know I went here and there and here and there, but
yeah. Well, I feel like we're going to get to all of those things too,
yeah.
like maybe a little more in depth too. But I guess to start, so it sounds like a dumb question, but I also feel like it can be like a super elaborate answer is like, how are we supposed to set goals? Because like me thinking about goals, as just like an everyday person, you're kind of just like, I want to run a marathon. But then I'm like, oh, in school, we learn about SMART goals and like, the whatever specific and measured and, all that. But then it's like, that can also be almost intimidating or just hard to do. And then I used to work in, all kinds of data and stuff. So like you did have to have specific goals and all kinds of things. So I'm like, you go all over the place with like how to set goals. So like, how do we set goals?
Yes.
How are we supposed to do it?
Yes. I like to, well, first, actually, let's get super duper clear on what a goal is. And why I say that, because this other word has been floating around in my head while we were talking, that I hear people talk about a lot about their dreams and their dreams in life. And, oh, I haven't reached my dreams and I'm, failing at my dream or whatever, however they're talking about it, but they're using the word dream. So some people actually like to say a dream is not actually a goal. A goal is a dream with a deadline, some people say. Okay, so that makes it way more, instead of someday I'd like to. With a deadline, you're like, oh no, in 5 years, I would like to, blah, 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 right? So that's a little better. But further than that, it's thinking about a target. That's the word I was looking for. A target or an objective that you envision, or a result of the future that you envision, that you are efforting towards, that you actually take action, that one endeavors to. And to me, it has to be meaningful as well. Which sure, that might be where the dream part comes in, but you will not take action on a goal if it isn't meaningful to you. So sure, a goal might be, or I should say, you won't take continued action, because yeah, you can definitely take initial action, but if it doesn't mean anything to you, it's going to become so arduous and laborious that you won't continue with it. I also think that a goal is equal parts exciting and scary. Otherwise, it's just an item on your to-do list. There's a big difference between my goal and, oh, I'm going to do this today. I have to go grocery shopping, or I have to, these are crude examples, but grocery shopping or doing laundry. I don't think there's that much meaning to it. That is an objective for the day to check that off, but there's nothing necessarily exciting about it, nothing scary about it. So there's nothing visceral that you feel in you when you get those things done, check them off. Running a marathon or going to the Olympics, that's just not on your list to check. Like there's actual oomph and meaning and why and effort behind it. So yeah, we'll start there as getting clear on a goal. That's what a goal is, a desired result that you envision for the future, that you are endeavoring to, or, putting forth effort toward.
Yeah.
So then how do we set that? I like to, with a lot of the clients that I work with, have them without overthinking it, because that's another way that you'll know that it really means something to you and it's visceral. Giving a time limit on just jotting down like a brain dump of everything you want. You could think about it in, okay, this year, or you could just think in general, depends on, how deep you want to go in that particular session. But basically a brain dump of what do I want really in my life. That could be tangible things like I want a Mercedes-Benz, or it could be ideas like I want world peace, like going from extreme to one extreme to another. But it could be, we're talking about performance here. So yes, you want to feel good in your body. You want to be strong. You want to run a marathon. You want to do an Ironman. You want to feel, you want to be more flexible, let's say, like just brain dump everything you want to without thinking about the structure of the goal. So like you said, we've all learned that smart structure to creating a goal without thinking of it like that. Just brain dump everything you want. Then, and typically I'll do like a 3 to 5 minute time limit with clients on that. Then look back at that list, scan over it, read it out loud, and the things that kind of pay attention to your body, the things that kind of jump out at you, might indicate those things that you really want to focus on now, or that really mean something to you, like on a deeper level. So you circle or highlight those things. So that's going to narrow the list down. And then when you actually take the time to write down, what is this goal of mine, whether it's for this next year or the next 5 years, you won't know. I think I wouldn't put a time to it until we see what's all involved. So that comes later. So just put it down. What is it that you want? So let's go with your example of running a marathon. Yes, let's get specific. Let's run the New York Marathon. If you're a person who has never ever run a marathon before, if you're a person who's never run 5K before, the next step would be, why do I want to do this in the first place? And I've asked all of the clients who I've trained for endurance races, for marathons, I will ask them why. And 9 times out of 10, they'll look at me like, what do you mean why? Why wouldn't I? Not everybody wants to run a marathon. So that's a great question. Like, because do you know the amount of work and the amount of the demand on the body, the demand on the brain, all the demands of running a marathon? Do you know what that is? So I think it's a great question. Why do you want to do this? So that's the next step. And that will indicate way more about the meaning to you than like, for some people, it might just be a bucket list item. Great. But for others who I've worked with, it has so much more implications to things about their past. Most often than most of the people I've worked with, it's about a deep sense of accomplishment. And I'm thinking of one client in particular who I worked with last year. She really wanted a deeper sense of accomplishment, but which is how I use a lot of my run training. I use it as a metaphor to literally cross a finish line. She wanted to know how that felt, to literally cross a finish line from something she's been working on for 3 months, 4 months. This was a half marathon that she was training for. And what that does to a person when they literally cross that finish line. They're a different person after. So for her, it was way deeper meaning than simply bucket list item. Oh, it's a hard thing. Everyone does it at some point in their life, or it's a challenging thing. I want to check it off my list. And it's important to know that why, because as your coach, that helps me understand how to push you along the way. It gives me insight to what motivates you along the way. And so the training will look different based on what your why is. The training will also look different. Now we're getting more specific. Is there a time in the goal? Like, what is the goal to running the marathon? Do you want to cross the finish line without stopping? Like, I had a client who wanted to run the whole race without walking. That was her goal. She didn't matter how slow it was, didn't matter time. She just did not want to walk. That's her goal. Whereas someone else has a very specific time goal, 3 hours and 13 minutes. That's what I want, So that's important to know as well. What is the specific goal of running the marathon? And then why do you want to do it? So those two things help me. And even if you don't have a coach, yes, it helps me as the coach, but even if you aren't working with a coach, it helps you get very clear on what your process might be like then. Because there's no need to push yourself and do time trials and mile time trials if time isn't your goal. That's just an example. Okay. Stop there for a second.
No, because you work with, like, you kind of mentioned, like, a very specific mindset of people, right? So this may not totally apply to people you work with, but do you, like, I feel like sometimes, like, the why question of why you're doing something can actually be hard to answer. And maybe that's just like a me personality. I'm like, yeah, I wanted to do this. Why did I want to do that again? My brain just can be like, whatever. But do you find people have a hard time, like, nailing down the why? Like, they know this is something they wanted to do. It's something they thought about, or is it more like, especially the people you work with are like, I have a real reason why I want to do that?
Oh no, there's some, I would say equal. I've worked with many who know right away, but definitely many who don't, who it is hard for them to pinpoint why. I would say part of that is because sometimes people just, people aren't really thinking about things on a deeper level. So it just comes to them. They know they want to do something and they do it. And then when asked like the deeper questions, they're like, oh, wait, like they really have to sit and take the time. So yeah, there's definitely some of that I've come across it being hard. And then when they get to the answer, so there's this exercise, who created it? Well, I first learned it. It was from the Toyota Corporation. That's how I learned. something they do with their employees is, I don't know if they still, I guess they still do, but it's something that was created some time ago. And they created what's called the 5 whys. And it was really to, again, create deeper meaning for just the day-to-day operations that an employee is doing so that they have more connection to what it is they're doing. So you ask someone, why do you want to run a marathon? Whatever the first answer is, okay, great. Why that answer? Why is that important? Then whatever that answer is, okay, so why is that important to you? And you do that 5 times. And typically by that 5th answer, you've gotten down really to the deep nitty-gritty of why someone wants to run the marathon. And I have found it many people surprised, the ones who didn't know or had a hard time just answering why, when they got down to the 5th why, they surprised themselves. And then when they said it, oh, I want to run a marathon because, and then the because is that 5th answer. Oh, it creates so much emotion that they were not expecting. Like, oh, wow, what? It's, for some, I remember a client, it was about her self-worth because she never, when she was younger, her family, let's see, she has 2 brothers or 3 brothers, but she's one girl amongst, I think it was 4 of them total, so 3 brothers. And they never related to her as a person who could do hard things, especially hard physical things. So how they related to her all growing up, that's how she saw herself. And so she never felt like she was an athlete or could do anything athletic. And she wasn't really in her body until I think it was after college, she met a friend who was training for a marathon and was like, oh, that sounded intriguing. And so she trained with him and did it. It was either half or a full, and that was the first time she didn't realize. The first why for her was because the friend was a guy. So this was a guy she was interested in. So that was her first why. But the more she dug deep and then the more she was training for it, she realized it was because of that back then, that how she related to herself was that she couldn't do hard things. And this would prove, wait, yes, I can. And she did. So it just has, for me, running, not just running, but physical performance, strength, and doing hard things and accomplishing hard things just has so much hard physical things, has so much crossover into every area of our lives, which is one of the reasons I find this meaningful work. But for the person doing it, that's why I think tapping into that why is so important.
Yeah. No, I really like that because I actually was just thinking, I'm like, I also have on my bucket list of run a marathon. And I'm like, why do I want to do that now? And then even as you're explaining, I'm like, okay, my brain's starting to because it's something to do. Why, and it's like, oh yeah, there's definitely more there. So I like that because sometimes I'm like, yeah, I struggle with knowing why I want to do something. Right.
Yes. Yeah. And it might not be perfect. That's also what I want to make clear. Even knowing what you want. Yes, I know there are people in life who don't know exactly what they want. It's not about knowing exactly what you want in life. But if there's something that keeps coming up for you, ooh, I think I want to do that, or I want to, okay, go there and explore. What is it that is connected to that you want in your life that you might not, that you don't have right now, or that you have never had maybe. And just to explore what that is. And then the why behind it, same thing. Might not come to some perfect, deep, profound answer, but it's an answer you probably weren't expecting, other than, oh, just because my friends are doing it. It's probably a little more than that,
Right. Okay, so kind of feeding off of that and how we're setting goals, but this is probably part of setting goals too, is okay, so things that we want to do, we're putting some kind of time limit on there. Now the idea of aggressive versus, and I didn't have a good word for easy attainable goals, but those two kinds of ends of the spectrum, because I know people talk about aggressive goals, especially with the growth mindset idea of you you never know what you're gonna be able to achieve unless you think that there's like this, there's no limits, right? But then there's also, I know, thought behind, like, you build that momentum when you have those easy goals and it's like, wow, I did this thing. Wow, I can do things.
Yes.
So what is kind of the thought, I guess, behind like those two things? Can they work together? How are we incorporating both of those ideas, I guess?
Yes, they can absolutely work together. Let's see. Well, I'll go with the setting easy or what you perceive to for sure be attainable goals is really to, and I like to do that even when someone has set a really ambitious or aggressive goal. Okay, that's going to be in the future. So now let's go backwards. What smaller goals or milestones must we hit to get to that goal? But even before the milestones, what smaller objectives can we go after just to train the mind and the body to win? What are easy wins that we can get ourselves to train your mind and your body to be in that winning mode and to, like you said, build momentum? So, and for some people, this is really, really difficult. For overachievers, this is really difficult to set small, easy goals. But I just think it's essential to build. That's what building a habit is. So we're building this habit of winning, right? So if you know, hands down, it's easy for me to walk, I don't know, an hour, 5 days a week. Great. So at the end of a week, that means 100% that you will be able to check off 5 out of 5 days that you walked for an hour. Great. We're going to do, and then if not, because this surprises people too. Wait, why didn't I do that? That was so easy. It was so rudimentary. Why? But I have this goal of running a marathon and I didn't even do 5 days of walking an hour. How am I going to run this marathon? But it gives you insight to your own behaviors. It's not that you physically couldn't do the 5 days of walking for an hour. It was your mindset around doing it because you thought it was so rudimentary and you thought it was so easy that you didn't give it a second thought. You thought it was just gonna be, but there's still effort that has to take place in the beginning when you're setting habits. There's effort before it becomes automatic. So anyway, that just shows you, oh, okay, I have to, quote unquote, take it more seriously and actually focus on the task at hand. So now let's say that you've gotten a week down, 100% compliance with the thing. Great. Now we can go after a slightly bigger goal or a slightly bigger task, even, because there's tasks that you do towards the big goal. But going back to the example of a person who's never run the 5K, but they do want to run a marathon, the smaller goal will be the 5K. So that's what we have to focus on first. And then those tasks that get you there, then you can check that one off and you will feel more confident about, okay, we can go a little bigger. Maybe the next now is 10K. Then we check off the tasks or milestones within that from the 5K to the 10K and get that solid. And when I say solid, and I heard myself earlier say 100% compliance, not even have to be 100%, but if it's 80, we want to use that 80-20 rule, 80% compliant, then you know that, okay, this is building momentum and I'm doing what I need to do. So that's the mindset behind setting easy goals first to train your mind and your body how to win. I like, if you've ever heard of the quote by Aristotle, we are what we habitually do or what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but a habit. So excellence, high performance, high achievement, whatever you want to call it, isn't just one big grand act that you do. It is constant habitual behavior. And that's what training yourself for those small wins or easy wins. That's what we're doing first. We are training yourself for excellence. You're training yourself for habitual high performance, successful high performance. So then now you've gotten a few of those easy wins. Great. You're building the momentum. You're building your confidence more importantly. Now you can go after the ambitious, aggressive goal. And calling it ambitious and calling it aggressive simply is, like you said, it taps into that growth mindset, but it's nudging you or pushing you towards something you might not have ever thought you could do. But imagine if you did do, what would that mean for your life? What would that mean for you as a person? If you actually did that thing, you would relate to yourself very differently if you did this big thing that you didn't think you could do. And there's so much value, I think, in setting ambitious goals like that. And then learning along the way towards it. You're going to learn so much about yourself in the process, actually, probably more so than you do at the end when you do it. You're learning about yourself in the process. That's the other thing about goal setting that I like. It is more about the growth that happens along the way.
Well, and that kind of leads me into like my next thought or question is failure. And I hate to just say failure because like it doesn't actually have to be thought of that way, but like those missteps, right? So if I have that goal of I want that 3:13 marathon, right? I ran 3:22 today. So I did not meet that goal. What is there like a process that you think makes the most sense of like moving forward, moving on? Where do you go from there? Instead of just being like, well, that was my goal and I sucked. So
that's a great, this topic, actually, this failure part, could be a whole episode.
Oh, geez. Okay. Maybe we have to schedule another time in a couple weeks.
No. I was saying that to say it's really important topic, and
yeah,
to make sure for myself not to go on a tangent. So I'll stay focused. So another thing I often teach is, and it sounds contrary actually to the growth mindset, but I just think it is a myth that is perpetuated too often in the high performance world or in high achievement or high achievers, that failure is not an option, that whole thing. I teach all the time that failure is actually an option, and you get to decide how to move forward from it. It's all about choice. So why is it actually an option? Because it's the easiest and most readily available option there is to not do something, to not effort towards something, because goals are not convenient. Just so we're clear, having goals, even if you're, high achiever and you have growth mindset, all of that, goals are not convenient because it requires effort, because it requires intention, because it requires thought. So they're not convenient. You have to put things in place in your life to achieve them, which might not be convenient if you, just for your everyday, right? So that's why failure is an option, because it's easy. So as a high performer, though, you get to choose when it happens. I always like to make sure that it's a when, not an if, because if we're not failing, then we're not actually efforting, we're not actually striving towards hard things if there isn't any failure. Now, yes, how you decide to respond to it is important. To dwell in the failure and, in how you feel about the failure, no, we don't want to dwell in it. I do think you should give yourself space, though, to have your feels, like, especially if we're talking about a goal that really is meaningful to you. Have your feels if it didn't happen. Like you said, your example, you wanted to run 3:13, but you ran 3:30. So after you feel how you feel about it, then you want to evaluate and look back. Okay, well, what went well and what didn't? Like in the process, what things weren't in place so that you understand, okay, why didn't it happen? especially again, if it's meaningful, then we want to understand what happened. If it didn't, and it was just, oh well, move on. Okay, well then it wasn't meaningful. There's no harm, no foul, I guess, moving on. But then why put yourself, put your body, put your mind through such a process if it's not meaningful to you? What's the point? That's another reason why I feel these things should be meaningful. Otherwise, why are we putting forth so much effort? But yeah, so evaluating, understanding what went well, what didn't, what was not in place as to why it didn't go my way. That could be many different things. It could have been a mindset thing. It could have been an actual, you did only half of the workouts you were supposed to do. It could have been a recovery thing. You didn't eat the way, it could be many things, but it's important to sit down and evaluate and to see if you can figure out what those things were. And then put those things in place to do it again, if it's meaningful to you. I think one of the reasons it's so difficult, or is difficult the right word? Taboo maybe, to say failure, is because people judge themselves on it, or they're putting value on themselves because of it. It's not, there's a difference between I failed at this thing versus I am a failure. Those are two completely different things. To say I am a failure, you're now owning an identity. That is not, that is not. I am a high performer who fails at some things and learns from a lesson from the failure so I can move forward. That's your identity as a high performer, not as a failure. So I just really want everyone to understand that. And knowing that puts you in a more powerful place as it relates to your goals and the ownership of your self and how you show up for your goals and how you show up in your life. That's a more powerful position to be, to recognize failure, to recognize that failure is an option, first of all, but then to recognize when it happens, and then to sit down and to ask yourself, why did it happen? And decide to gather the lesson from it and move forward. And there's so much value in that too. The moving forward after it didn't go your way.
Yeah. And then I only have like one more question, and then I will let you go because I feel like we've already talked a bunch. But so kind of along with failure, and I feel like you kind of answered probably in that question a little bit, but giving up now on a goal. You had this goal, you worked super hard for it. And I was I'm trying to think of examples of like when that makes sense too, but like there are situations where like either within your control, you decide like, I'm actually pivoting away from something I just worked 3 years on, or you're like, I just worked 3 years on this thing, and now for whatever reason, it doesn't make sense in my life. I have to change my idea. Kind of like, what do you do with that? Is it just like, well, I guess those are probably two different mindsets too, right? Like I'm deciding to give up on this goal and I'm being forced to give up on this goal. So maybe that's too long of a question to answer.
But that's a good point too. And before I kind of give my thoughts around it, I will say this is an area, this is an area that was contributing to the rough patch that I was in the last year. Because I have had to really sit down, do a lot of introspection about my athletic goals, and specifically when I missed my Olympic opportunity from my injury, asking myself that question I mentioned earlier. All right, are you just being stubborn? And you're like, no, I'm going to be an Olympian if it's the last thing I do, and I'm going to do it and do it and do it because whatever. Or do I truly feel like I have unfinished business and it's still meaningful to me? I'm still connected to it. And I've been in that back and forth, and it's just caused so much solitude, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but just meaning withdrawing from so much interaction with people, just because I've been in this introspective space. So all of that to say, I don't necessarily have the right answer, but I will say yet for myself, but what I'll say for your audience is there is also is to not look at yourself negatively or down on yourself if you do decide that you are pivoting in a different direction. I was listening to a podcast, one of my favorite podcasts called The Hidden Brain. It's about psychology and the behavior of people and all of that. And this particular episode was about goals and how we are often taught how to set them, how to work towards them, how to achieve them. We're not often taught how to decide to leave them alone. And I was like, oh my God, this is so true. And there's nothing wrong with deciding to leave them alone, deciding to move into another direction. I feel like as long as it is from an intentional place and that you did your due diligence, and it just is. one of the things I talked about that I wanted to highlight here is something called the law of diminishing return. It's actually a concept, I think, in economics or in economics, but it applies to everything really. And essentially it's the continued effort towards something. Well, actually, hold on, let me make sure I get it right. It's the continued effort or action in a particular area increases. As it increases, your results or the rate of return doesn't continue to increase or may often decrease or stall out if other variables remain the same. So this comes back to what I was speaking about earlier, evaluating what went wrong or what was in place or what wasn't in place. If things didn't change, like there's another saying, if you want to change, you have to change, right? Or if you want things to change, you have to change. Like if other variables stayed exactly the same and you're just continuing to work hard, your effort is going, then you might have diminishing returns. Your results may decrease. You have to evaluate one thing at a time and then make those changes one thing at a time in order to continue the results. So if you are tracking along the way, I know we didn't get too much into tracking, but you definitely need to track your goals so that you're seeing what is working and what is not along the way. So reaching the goal or not reaching the goal is not the only thing you track. There are other things you track along the way to see the likelihood as you're getting closer toward the goal. And so in our example, we're talking about a race. As you're getting closer to race day, you have these other milestones and these other things that you've been tracking to tell you, oh, what's been off, what's working, what's not working. And then along the way, you're making the adjustments. So you shouldn't be on race day, the time that you know something's working or not working. But anyway, all of that to say, it is it doesn't mean you don't have a growth mindset just because you pivot in a different direction. In actuality, one might argue you have even more of a growth mindset because you recognize what's going to be better for you in your life, or what means more to you, or what, like the very idea that you are taking the time to evaluate that and intentionally think about it is a growth mindset. I don't know if that answered your question, but
yeah, no, definitely. No, I think it's also a good place to end too. Because I know we also took a lot of time, and yeah, I know we didn't talk too much about tracking goals, and I know that was in like my notes too, but leave people wanting more in 6 months. I'll see when you're free, and we can touch back on goals.
Yes. I mean, goals are just, I've told you before, I love talking about them, but I do think they are what's that word? It's not the juice, but whatever this word is, it's what sparks us. It's what gets us to challenging ourselves to do stuff.
Yeah.
Having goals, and learning about ourselves, and then actually doing things that we didn't think possible. And that's really powerful in our lives when you do that. So yeah, I could talk about goals all day long.
I know. Well, that's why I needed you on this, because I was like, me talking about goals, I'm like, I don't even know what my goals are. So right. This was great. And also I think it's going to help me try to, as I'm still trying to evaluate what's important with everything I'm doing. It's super helpful with all those thoughts on that. But now I'm going to let you go. But where can people find you, especially if, we have some of those high achievers out there trying to figure everything out?
Yes.
Where can we find you?
Yes. Main place, or I'm going to give you, have I mentioned this before? I don't remember if I created it before the last time we spoke, but definitely on Instagram, the Tilita Experience is my handle. But then also I created this high performance affirmations, essentially specifically for this growth mindset, that basically you receive a daily text with a high performance affirmation for you for the day. Something that you can easily incorporate into if you have a meditation practice, or if you just have a daily mantra or affirmation practice already, something you can add into that. But they're short, like one-liner affirmations that, if you think you want a little push in the right direction as far as your mindset is concerned, I invite you to grab that. We can put it obviously in the show notes, but it's basically if you just text the word mindset to this particular number, and we'll include the number in the notes, then you will automatically be added to my text tribe and receive the high performance affirmations each day.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all of your insight, but also for always taking the time to chat with us and for coming on the podcast for a third time. So
thank you for inviting me.
I want to thank Coach T so much for coming on the podcast again. Always great to catch up with her, and she always has some really awesome wisdom for all of us. So always nice to bring that energy on the show. Like we mentioned, all of her links are in the show notes, so make sure you check her out and everything that she is doing. And thanks again for listening.
Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe, all the things that you can do for a podcast that you enjoy listening to. Make sure you check out social media, our website, any of those things. If you have questions, comments, interview requests, feel free to email me at marikeyrunclub@gmail.com.